In this video, I would like to talk about the Child Labour Amendment Act or Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act 2016. So, the topic is Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act 2016. So, in 1986, I already mentioned in the discussion on child labor, the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act was passed in original law was passed in 1986, and it was constituted, or this was passed in order to protect the children from labor and exploitation, especially the forced labor, especially to protect the children from forced labor and exploitation. That is why this act was passed. But over the years, there was pressure on, in fact, by 2006, under pressure from the NGOs and the human rights activists and all, all forms of child labor, whatever be there, even the domestic child labor, everything was banned. But the industries and various vested interests started putting pressure on the government, and in 2012 itself an amendment bill was introduced. But unfortunately, it was not passed at that time. In 2012, an amendment bill was introduced to dilute the child labor law, was introduced to dilute the child labor laws at that time. But finally, after the Narendra Modi government came to power, in the name of ease of doing business and all these things, under pressure from these industry lobbies, we have actually diluted, and whatever gain we had in eliminating or reducing the child labor in the country, we have completely negated all those things, and we brought this amendment, and which is not a positive step, rather it has become a negative step in eliminating child labor. That is the reality. So, in 2016, in July 2016, the Parliament passed it, and in August 2016, the bill got assent from. In August 2016, the President of India gave his assent, and this amendment has been brought in, or the Child Labor Prohibition Amendment Act. Okay, Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act 2016 was passed. Now, 2-3 highlights of the point. Number one, which it said that according in view of the Right to Education and the Right to Education Act, RTE Act 2009, when we talk about the in the introduction and all, we say big statements. It said, in view of the Right to Education Act 2009, the act put a blanket ban on employment of children below the age of 14. So, a blanket ban on, so that looks very good, blanket ban on employment of children below the age of 14 in any form, blanket ban on employment of children below the age of 14, below the age of 14. So, we have made it very clear, in any form there should not be any employment, but allows, but the problem is an exception was given, but allows them to work at home, but allows to work at home, allows to work at home, family enterprises, or outside of the school hours, and in family enterprises. So, allows to work at home and family enterprises outside of school hours. Very interesting. What is the school hour itself is a big problem. Outside of school hours and during holidays. Outside of school hours and during holidays. So, in the initial part of the law says that, the employment, the act put a blanket ban on all employment of children in any form below the age of 14. But then they are saying, but allows them to work at home and in family enterprises, outside the school hours and during holidays. See, even in the audio visual entertainment industry, the various competitions which are the dance competition, the music competition which is going on, in all these things children can be employed, children can work. See, it's very sad, because till this 2016 amendment, it is very clear that children below the age of 14 should not work. That is a common thing here. See, till the age of 8th standard, what do they work and how do they work? Why should they work? We should be talking about there should not be any form of work wherever it is. Wherever it is, they cannot do any economic activity. They should be in school, they should enjoy, they should study, they should play, they should move around with fellow children. That should have been the spirit. And then the first point is, you can work at home. Number two, the act also created a new category of adolescents. So children below the age of 14, no work. Adolescents, a new category has been created called adolescents between 14 to 18 age group. And they can be employed in non-hazardous occupation. The law says, please employ them. Very sad. Okay, the law says they can be employed in non-hazardous occupations. They can be employed in non-hazardous occupation below the age of 18, 14 to 18. And one more point is, now which are the non-hazardous, the hazardous employment has been reduced to 3. A third point, the act defines hazardous employment as just 3 of them. Earlier it used to be 83 of them. Earlier 83 sectors were defined as hazardous. Now just 3. 3 of them are defined as hazardous. Which are those 3? Mining, explosives and occupations mentioned in the Factory Act. What are the 3? These 3 are mining, explosives and occupations mentioned in Factory Act. Occupations except these 3, all of them. Now the act says there are only 3 hazardous industries, and in non-hazardous industries adolescent children can work. 14 to 18 can work. Only 3 of them are declared as, only just 3 of them. Earlier 83 of them were there. Now it has been reduced to just 3, and they said that if they are working in other industries, then it is not it's not a child labor. So 14 to 18 can work in non-hazardous. Then a fourth point, that is, the act has enhanced the punishment from a fine from 20,000 to 50,000 fine for the first offence, for employing, and imprisonment from 6 months to 2 years. Imprisonment of 6 months to 2 years. So it has enhanced the punishment for employing children employing children or rather in hazardous industries, or employing children below the age of 14. But 14 to 18 in non-hazardous children can be employed, but only 3 industries have been declared as hazardous industry, which is very sad. So that means the children are left, or rather this 14 to 18 children, this 18 age group, the adolescents, they can be they can be engaged in construction, they can be engaged in asbestos industries, they can be engaged in brick kilns, they can be engaged in glass factories, garbage picking, glass factories, garbage picking, etc. Okay. So, what is happening is, in the name of making the law more stringent, we are actually diluting the law. So, the central and a fifth point is one more very interesting point, and which is very sad point I would like to say. The act also empowers the central government to alter the list of the hazardous occupation. The act empowers the central government, the executive, to alter the list of hazardous employment. See, it should have been with the parliament at least. Now the executive can do it. They can add or subtract. So hazardous employment, the list of the hazardous employment can be altered by the central government and not by the parliament. It should have been by the parliament. So these are some of the highlights. And the act also, one more point I would like to add, it also talks about setting up a fund called Child and Adolescent Labor Rehabilitation Fund. The act also provides for child and adolescent labor rehabilitation fund. Rehabilitation fund. Okay, for the rehabilitation of the children. So it also says that the state government to it is the duty of the state government to rehabilitate the children, and up to 15,000 rupees can be given to the children, and all those things have been mentioned. So that is slightly less important. So there is a fund, and it is the duty of the state government to rehabilitate the children. Now coming to the analysis, I already said, I have already talked about the critical thing, but still I would like to add this point. First of all, by reducing the hazardous industries from 83 to 3, it is very sad. So it can reduce the child laborers in number, but not in reality. Yeah, so since other 80 industries are allowed to, the children are allowed, it is no more child labor then. So if they are working in this hazardous industry, then it will become a child labor. So that means what? We will be able to reduce the number of child laborers. Technically, the number of child laborers can be reduced technically, because we have changed the definition. In reality, we are not going to change anything. Then it is highly unfair. I mean, in fact, ILO standard says that children below the age of 18 should not work. Now the adolescent children, except 3 industries, everywhere they can work. It is highly unfair, and this 14 to 18 is equally important age. That is the time when the hormonal changes are happening. Girl children will be entering into their menstrual cycle and all. It's a very, very important age group. That is when a lot of trauma, that is the time when they should be given best education, best health care, and we are allowing them to work, which is not, that should not be the spirit. And then we will not be able to create human resource. That's what I always say. And it is highly unfair. So it is highly unfair to these adolescent children. Unfair to the age group of 14 to 18, no doubt regarding this, because of the redefinition of it. And also the discretionary power given to the government is highly unacceptable. This discretionary power to declare, discretionary power to add or subtract from the list, from the hazardous list, it is not acceptable. It should have been with the parliament. So the government can revise at any given time. Then another very, where the dilution, actual dilution has taken place is, even the children below the age of 14, they can work. I mean, earlier the law says the children below the age of 14 should not work. Now, if they work in the family enterprise, in family, they can work in family and in family enterprise. So this is a dilution of the act, and also how many hours, it did not define the working hours. And what is outside the school hours? So it did not define the working hours. That means there can be a lot of exploitation, did not define the working hours. And also, after school, simply saying that after school, and there is no, there is no clear definition of what is after school all about. So there is it can easily be misused. And most importantly, the family enterprise, the definition of the family enterprise is another tragedy. So the sixth point I would like to say, the definition of family enterprise. That is a big problem. It says any work, profession or business performed by the members of the family with the help of other persons. Any work, profession or business, any work, profession or business performed by the members of the family with the help of other persons. Just see, that means what? Suppose I am a contractor, I give some money to the family and say that you do this. So with the help of other person, so is it a family business? So that means instead of employing a person, I have to employ the family. Then it becomes family business, by the members of the family with the help of other persons. With the help of other persons. This is a very, very broad and diluted definition, and it can easily be misused. That means anybody, any child can work below the age of 14. Only thing is, instead of, if I am a contractor, I need not employ a person, I will say I am giving this contract to the family. And then it's a family enterprise and you work. This is nonsense. See, this is not the way we should treat our children. This is not the way. And whatever gains we had till 2016, we are going to undo all the gains. It is against the spirit of the RTE Act 2009. 2 points I would like to say. One is, it will undo the gains till now. It is against the spirit of RTE Act 2009, absolutely no doubt. And it is a violation of all the international norms of ILO, UNICEF. It is against the UNICEF Convention on Rights of the Children. It is the ILO, International Labour Organization standards. And there is no regulation. In fact, this act is not providing, another point, it is not providing any regulation, no regulation, or the regulatory mechanism is not very clear, no inspection, no monitoring, and also it is not laying down the criteria to define what is family enterprise, no criteria to define what is family enterprise. So this is, and even there is a provision for penalizing the parents for sending their children for work. See, rather than penalizing, we should be helping them in finding an alternate. Penalizing and demonizing the parents are not going to solve the problem. We have to educate them, we have to give opportunity for them, we have to provide schools for them, or maybe direct benefit transfer to them. So in the whole, this act has diluted whatever gains we got. In the name of ease of doing business, in the name of helping the industry, in the name of economic growth, if you are sacrificing the precious lives of children at the altar of this economic growth, and that to whose economic growth we are talking. If Ambani grows, if Ambani becomes the richest man in the world, what are you and me going to get? Some businessmen may make more profit. Unfortunately, our ease of doing business phenomena is that we are not bothered about our own children. We are not helping, and if we are pushing them for child labor, this is the biggest human rights violation we can do in the name of democracy and in the name of industry and what you call in the name of economic growth. So this Child Labor Amendment Act of 2016 is a sad episode in the history of India, I will say, on the child rights. We should not have been doing it. Unfortunately, we have done it, and that is the law right now. Let us hope that one day Supreme Court will come up and say that this is nonsense. Common sense will prevail among our political class. See, this first amendment was brought in during the UPA government's time itself. Nobody is nobody can escape this. Even during the UPA's time, this law came, or rather this bill came. Of course, it was not passed because of one or other reason. But NDA government, the Modi government's time, we could pass it, and then we have diluted the child labor law. 1986 law has been diluted. Whatever gain, even 2006, more stringent actions were taken, but now in 2016, we have diluted everything. Now it is easily we can circumvent the law, and any child can work, whether it is adolescents, very clearly mentioned, except 3 jobs, 3 industries, 80 industries were deregulated and said it is not hazardous in the first place. But even Supreme Court, in one of the judgments, I still remember, Supreme Court said even construction industry is a hazardous industry. Construction job is a hazardous industry. But now it has been removed from the hazardous list. Only 3 of them are there. Children below the age of 14, in the name of family enterprise, they also can be engaged in any job. So what is left? This is how the Child Labor Amendment Act 2016 has been passed. So many problems. Let us hope common sense will prevail and this law will be struck down by the Supreme Court in the coming days. That is the only hope we can have. That's all about this act.